Islam, peace.
And love.
All right, today we're just gonna unpack actually a couple things. We're gonna look at a couple books, and we're also going to look at a couple lawful statements or decrees, you could say. The first thing I want to unpack is the word black, because in all seriousness, y'all don't get it.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
Seriously. All right, I'm gonna begin with this. Allow me to propose this. If you describe yourself as black, you're a racist.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Why?
Here's why. If you're calling yourself black, that means that that's the construct that you're using to describe yourself. That descriptive construct that is actually a term that was given to you to not only conceal your identity, but to conceal history and the identity of everybody around you. Because once you use this construct, everybody else is using this construct too. Because this construct really only exists for you, the so-called black person. Because if listen, I'm gonna be a little bit more raw in this video because I'm tired of like just not being real with y'all totally. When we were in school, we were forced to watch videos of like people being sprayed with fire hoses and be like, I'm talking about like women wearing with their purses on, running their heels, boom, blasting into the walls from fire hoses. Right? We watched this stuff when we were in like third grade. You know how awkward that was? So it's time that we start, being a little bit more real, and we take a scalpel, and we really peel the skin back on this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like let's take a look at what's really under the hood, right? All right, so before we begin, I'm a hop into this book right here. It's called "Black People Are Indigenous to the Americas." Before I explain how everything that was taught to you is not only a fumbling lie, but it's also like I I can't even describe how dark the world we actually live in is. And this lie, this little lie is actually the only one of the only keys that fit into that keyhole. Because once you start questioning that thing that you call yourself, it's gonna lead you to that thing right there. And that thing, oh man, I'm telling you, as soon as you open the box and Pandora starts letting out all the creatures that weren't even supposed to be whispered in the dark, there's no putting them back in that box. All right. So, first, it is important to note the definition of Tani and Swarthy. Tani is defined as a brown-skinned person. Swarthy is defined as being a dark complexion or a dark hue. We're going to pause right there. So, if somebody is described as being swarthy or tawny, most definitely in the United States, they would probably also be described as being black, what y'all call black. All right? So, in the minds of people before the Reconstruction period, before the 1800s, they used words to describe people's appearances like swarthy, tawny, other words too. But the difference between then and now is just because they were being described as a certain complexion, it didn't mean that they were stateless. You call yourself black today and you're stateless, so that's your only identity. All right? So, with that being said, we just saw the definition of what swarthy and tawny means. All right, now we're going to hop into Benjamin Franklin's observations concerning the increase of mankind in 1751. And we might bounce back to this, but I want to get this out the way right now while it's fresh on your mind what swarthy and tawny means. All right, we're gonna go to number 24, which leads me to want to add one remark that the number of purely white people. Let me switch it over. All right, which leads me to add one remark that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionably very small. Remember that. All Africa is black or tawny. All right. So aside from the South Africans who are colonizers, everybody on the continent of Africa, if they were to come to the United States, you would call them black. But what two words did Benjamin Franklin use to describe a black person during that time? The appearance of a black person? Swarthy and tawny. Just like we just read in this here book right here, right? You heard? All right. All Africa is black or tawny. Asia, chiefly tawny. All right, we're already peeling the skin back a little bit. Does today's population in Asia, would you describe them as chiefly tawny? Maybe in Southeast Asia, but think about how massive the Chinese population is today, right? I mean, that's a huge population. So this statement is not accurate today. So that means yesterday was accurate. It was different. The population yesterday was different. Today's population does not reflect yesterday's population. So we're already seeing that. That's just in Asia. Continuing. And again, your feelings can be hurt all you want. I'm reading this stuff out of books and from decrees, from laws, from edicts. If you're getting angry at information, maybe you shouldn't have been born in the Aquarian age. Because we're not our ancestors. We're not just going to get kicked while we're on the ground. We're going to read books out loud and let history speak for itself. There's no reason for me to add my own opinion to it. History is speaking too loudly for me to say anything. All right. Mm-hmm. America exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. So aside from the new quote unquote white people on this continent, America was wholly so. Wholly what? Black or tawny. Think about that. The people in America were described no different as the people in the continent that you call Africa today, according to what Benjamin Franklin said. All right. And in Europe, the Spaniards, remember this, because keep in mind who colonized this continent. The time of the initial colonization period, the people that were colonizing America would have also been described as black people. So there was black colonizers coming from Europe colonizing black people in the Americas. This is what we're reading right now. I'm just giving you the nitty gritty, all right? Just in case, you know what I'm saying, your brain's not fully catching on to what I'm saying right now. All right? And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, pause right there. Mother Russia. He just said that he just said that these people were swarthy, tawny, black. Russia. Does today's population of Russia reflect what Benjamin Franklin saw? But like I said, if you call yourself black, black has a lot to do with science. And that's why they gave you the 5 races today. All right? Because science is just a political tool that is used in order to, as I say, conceal not only your identity, but it's also a tool that is used really to dispute history. All right, because if you're worried about haplogroups, you're not listening to what Benjamin Franklin said he saw. He said he saw a bunch of brothers in Russia. I can't say that that's what I see when I think of Dagestan in Georgia. That's not what I see today. And I know that's the Caucasus, but he said Russia. So check this out. Russians and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. Let's pause for a second. He just said the Russians. He says the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. Let's hop back into this book again, just in case y'all forgot. All right.
Black, tawny, swarthy.
Complexions. First, it is important to note the definition of Tani and Swarthy. Tani is defined as a brown-skinned person. Swarthy is defined as being a dark complexion or a dark hue. All right. As are the Germans also. The Saxons only accepted who with the English make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. So Benjamin Franklin said that only the Saxons and the English make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. He said, I could wish. He said, not, he doesn't wish. He said he could wish. That's how small and few that they were in number. He said, I could wish their numbers were increased. Check this out. He said Germans also, though, right? So what's up with that point in time in the 1900s, like 200 years later, where Hitler was saying that the pure race, the pure white race, was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans? What was that about? That's crazy because 200 years earlier, Benjamin Franklin said that the Germans were swarthy. That's the opposite of what Hitler was talking about. For one, in Germans, according to what Benjamin Franklin said, do not make up the principal white race. So why were they being referred to and acknowledged as being pure whites? The Scandinavians, y'all aren't considered pure white. You don't make up. You're not part of the. He said the Saxons and the English. And honestly, I'm gonna just go ahead and cut the throat right here. I'm gonna be honest with you. Benjamin Franklin was capping a little bit. Benjamin Franklin wasn't being totally frank with you. You get it? He was not. He was not being frank with you, man. Look, I'm gonna be real with you. The original English or the original British, they were not white people, dude. We're gonna go into this book. This was written in the 1800s. I'm gonna put the date right here. Boom. This was written by a Scottish man, quote unquote white guy, in the 1800s. So he didn't have the same political agreements of the historians of today and what they're gonna put out there and how they're gonna say it. All right. This is what he said. And remember, he's in Scotland. This is what he said about the original British. In his remarks upon the Aborigines of Tasmania, Mr. Bonwick refers more than once to their kinship structurally with certain prehistoric Europeans. Mr. Carter Blake, a competent judge, is nice to find those nowadays, right? A competent judge describes a skull from a cyst in Uist Island of Scotland of an ovately dolichocephalic form and having a narrow forehead with great projecting brow like the Tasmanian. Mr. Samuel Lang, in his interesting revelations of the chitinous cyst, imagines the earliest inhabitants of North Britain were cumbocephalic, boat-headed, approaching to a Negroid or Australian, rather than to a Mongol or Arctic type. Again, he writes, this tribe of Aboriginal Britons must have more closely resembled the Australian or Tasmanian. Pause. Dude, in Tasmania, they all look like the same guy on repeat. And they're all short black guys. This is what he's saying the ancient Britons were. He said, surely. I'm going to finish the sentence though. Then the Laplander or Esquimaux. And the Esquimaux is like the Siberians, essentially. So, let me finish this. Dr. Pruner Bay, to make a final extract from Mr. Bonwick's book, compares our southern blacks with the prehistoric caveman. That's crazy. I'm going to pause right there. So, there you go. The very substratum, even of the English heritage, would be that of a Aborigine people that resemble the Tasmanians and the Australoids. So essentially they were like black people. So Benjamin Franklin wasn't being honest with you. He wasn't being fully honest with you when he said what he said. I'm gonna finish reading this too. And while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet by clearing America of woods, and so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of inhabitants in Mars or Venus, why should we in the sight of superior beings darken its people?
Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America, where we have so fair an opportunity by excluding all blacks and tawnies of increasing the lovely white and red? But perhaps I am partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind.
There's a lot to unpack right there, and we can't do it in this video. It's not possible. We're already compressing a lot into one video. But I will say this. He said, man, them boys is everywhere. I could wish that our numbers would be increased. I could. But they everywhere. He said they in Europe, Asia, for sure in America, just like Africa. And you know Africa, full of them. He said there's nowhere we can go. They're everywhere. Where you just now finding this out? Is this new? Is this new information? I mean, all right. Now, we're going to fast forward. Like I said, we might come back to that. The next thing that I wanted to read to y'all was the names that we were being called. We were being called anything from a Moor to a Saracen to an Indian to a Dane. Many different names, depending on the location that people that look just like you and me were found. Alright. Now, I want to read this to you. Going back into this book. This is the meaning of a Moor. This is what the word Moor means. Honestly, this is a lot. So I'm going to just let you read this. I'm going to put this on the screen, take a snapshot of it. Boom. Boom. Okay. So now you know it has a lot to do with not just the swarthy complexion. You see that word swarthy again, right? And you see that word swarthy was used to describe the Moors, and then Moors were then called black later on. You see how they kind of like, how they did that with the hands? With that being said, I'm actually gonna hop back into this book again because I want to read this to you. This is shorter. And right now I'm just laying a whole bunch of puzzle pieces on the table. So if you're listening to this video and you're this far into it anyway, you're of a higher intellectual quality. So you should be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together without me being super blatant about everything I'm saying. Alright, so...
But you can always ask questions and message and stuff if you need to.
Right.
And we'll...
And I will answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll be happy to answer.
As you can see, I don't play. So I get a lot of tabs. I gotta, you know what I'm saying? I get a lot of tabs I gotta get through. Alright, so... Thus the Moors or Saracens, the Danes, and other kindred races, and the Gypsies are virtually the same people under different names. Alright. With that being said, next puzzle piece. In fact, I'm gonna go to this first. So you just what we just read is that the Moors and the Saracens, same people. All right. So This is called the Papal Bull, Dum Diversus. I'm going to just read what this is. This Papal Bull statement issued by Pope Nicholas in 1452 fueled the fire of an era of human history referred to as the Age of Discovery. Essentially a public decree or declaration of intent. This writing encouraged Portuguese, Italian, and other European explorers. Remember that we just read that all those people were so-called black people. That we just read that. All right. And other European explorers to seek out new, because this was written in 1452. So if in 1751, this is what we know, today's populations do not reflect what Benjamin Franklin said. But Benjamin Franklin came a sum of 300 years plus after this statement. So if even he observed that they were black, you know in 1452 what they were. This is not even a joke. So this is giving you a more accurate understanding and lens of history as you're reading these decrees of what really happened. All right? Because what you're going to do by the end of this video is you're going to question, why don't today's populations reflect the populations of that of the past? Well, once you start asking that, you start getting into this continent having a reconstruction period, having a renaissance period of where there was a old civilization that was destroyed and then repopulated with new people that do not reflect the old inhabitants' appearance, culture, anything. All right. This happened in Europe. It happened in the Americas. And if I had to guess, it happened in Asia too. If I had to guess, this is like a worldwide thing that happened. All right. Now, Portuguese, Italian, and other European explorers to seek out new to them lands, to colonize those lands, and to proselytize the inhabitants of those lands using whatever means necessary. So to convert them using whatever means necessary. Now, how Jesus-like does that sound? We're going to leave it right there. So when you call yourself a Christian, I want you to understand that Christianity made its way to this continent through decrees just like the one we're about to read right now. You just read that a so-called black person in the 1800s would have been referred to as a Moor or a Saracen. They would have been described as being swarthy, tawny, and many different groups of people fell into this category, actually. And it wasn't just their appearance that fell into this category. As you dig deeper, you'll realize that there was like super empires. They were like intercontinental. All right. And so it went beyond just the appearance. It was a statehood. All right. So, but not for everybody. But there's always been different divisions. There's always been. But I'm saying these super empires existed on these continents that we just described. All right. To colonize those lands and to proselytize the inhabitants of those lands using whatever means necessary, even violence, enslavement, and murder. That definitely happened. All that stuff. Below is the Papal Bull statement in its entirety. Now, you read this, but I just want to read this one part to you. Okay? But I want you to go read this if you even care, all right? But it says, for number one, as we indeed understand from your pious and Christian desire, you intend to subjugate the enemies of Christ, namely the Saracens. What's a Saracen? So the Christians, they mainly wanted to subjugate you. So if you are a quote-unquote black Christian today, dude. Let's continue.
And bring them back with powerful arm to the faith of Christ, if the authority of apostolic see supported you in this. Therefore, we consider that those rising against the Catholic faith and struggling to extinguish Christian religion must be resisted by the faithful of Christ with courage and firmness, so that the faithful themselves, inflamed by the ardor of faith and armed with courage to be able to hate their intention, not only to go against the intention if they prevent unjust attempts of force, but with the help of God, whose soldiers they are, they stop the endeavors of the faithless. We, fortified with divine love, summoned by the charity of Christians, and bound by the duty of our pastoral office, which concerns the integrity and spread of faith, for which Christ our God shed his blood, wishing to encourage the vigor of the faithful and your royal majesty in the most sacred intention of this kind, we grant to you full and free power.
Boom. Pause for a second.
We grant to you full and free power.
Through what?
Through the apostolic authority by this edict, to invade, conquer, fight, subjugate the Saracens and pagans and other infidels and other enemies of Christ, and wherever.
Boom. The Saracens and pagans, and we know by pagans he meant Jews, right? And am I talking about the Jews over there in Israel? No, I'm not. And why can I confidently say that? You show me in their history where they were conquered by any Christian edict. You show me in their history where the Jews today were conquered and turned into Christians. You show me. I'll show you where black people have been, quote unquote, right? And I'll show you where black people have had everything stripped to them, down to their name. Stripped from them. Continue. No, pause, actually. Read this again. Read that again.
Here we go. The apostolic authority by this edict to invade, conquer, fight, subjugate the Saracens and pagans and other infidels and other enemies of Christ.
Boom. So pause for a second. Let's be clear about this. When we say Islam, this is a deep thing. This goes back to an ancient holy war that took place on your bloodline. All right? You today might be a Christian, but just know yesterday Christians considered you and your bloodline the enemies of Christ. So you can make sense out of that in your walk.
Right.
We already made sense out of it. And we've made tons of videos explaining our stance. But when you read laws like this, and I call them a law because this is something that was decreed and they did it. All right. So I look at it like it's a law. All right. When you look at stuff like this, whatever you believe in, it has to line up with world history. You can't ignore world history when it comes to your beliefs. They have to somehow make sense. Or else you just believe fairy tales and fables, which is fine. All right, there's nothing wrong with it. But just know over here, we study law and we know history. All right, so this is what we're doing. So we're not just blindly believing things. All right. So with that being said, we're gonna step out of that for a second, because what you just seen is that there was war decreed on the Saracens and the Jews, which, according to the Bible, the Jews were God's people. This decree was saying that these were the enemies of Christ. What are we talking about right now? I'm going to read you something out of Christopher Columbus's diary. And he was a Moor. He was a quote-unquote Saracen. And this is what he felt during the time when he was on Earth. I'm going to just give you the down and dirty real quick. He thought that it was the apocalypse taking place. He believed that whatever government rises out of the ashes of the formal empire that existed, he said that surely would be the Antichrist government. Without a shadow of a doubt. He believed that the Book of Revelations was unfolding right there in his lifetime. When in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. During that point in time, the Moors and the Jews got kicked out of Europe too. You can't forget that. All right. So, and we just read that these were the enemies of Christ, and we just read that these were all black people. They were swarthy, they were tiny, just like you find in Africa, America, wholly so, in Europe, oh man, all of them except the Anglo-Saxons and the English.
Asia chiefly.
But hey, and look, you don't forget, we just read that even the English was some little dark dudes. All right, we're gonna hop into this right here.
Except the Saxons and the English.
Yeah, he said Benjamin Franklin said everybody was black, pretty much. What we would call today black, except for the Anglo-Saxons and the English. Isaac's sons, another group of Hebrews, you're saying that they were white. I think the lie detector test said that was a lie. All right, that was a lie, straight up. All right, the English. This dude in the 1800s, like during the midst of the Reconstruction period that was taking place over the earth, when all these Tartarian buildings were being reconstructed and all that, right? He said out of his own mouth, "Hey man, the bones we're digging up, they're miniature black guys." This is what he said in his book. All right, I'm gonna just give you the down and dirty. So even the English were not white people. So where y'all come from, I don't even know. Because it wasn't even white people who colonized the Americas, according to what Benjamin Franklin stated. And according to what history and anthropology states. Alright? So we're going to page 165 in Christopher Columbus's diary. I'm going to read from number 2. In the 5th place, this learned writer discusses what the astronomers say with certainty about the destruction of Mohammedan domination. You read from 3.
For according to Albamazar, Albamazar, that domination cannot last more than 693 years, but it will last that long unless for some unexpected reason the duration is shortened by some amount, depending on several factors. As this learned writer says, when he wrote these things, it was the Arabic year 665, reckoned from the time of Muhammad. Therefore, he concluded that the law of Muhammad would soon be destroyed, a great consolation to the Christians. Thus, God should be praised for giving to philosophers the illumination of knowledge through which the law of truth is confirmed and strengthened, and through which we perceive that the enemies of the faith must be destroyed. As confirmation of his opinion, he cited the Apocalypse, which gives the number of the beast as 663, 663, 30 years less than the previously mentioned number. But God often conceals some part of the complete number, a common practice in the scriptures, as Bede wrote, and perhaps God wished that this not be expressed completely, but remain hidden, like other things written in the Apocalypse. For it could happen that before the year determined by Albamazar, the Saracens are...
The who?
The Saracens.
And the Saracens are the Moors or the Indians or the quote-unquote black people, right?
Right. Or tawny or swarthy.
Or enemies of Christ.
Or enemies of Christ, exactly.
Right.
I'm going to read that again. For it could happen that before the year determined by Albamazar, the Saracens are destroyed either by the Tartars or the Christians. Because
boom. By the who?
Tartars or Christians.
By the Christians? Why would Christians do... Oh, that's right. Because that decree when they said that Saracens, aka your ancestors, were the enemies of Christ. Oh, now I see the drop. Okay. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought that Christianity was actually a political, or being a Christian was a political statement rather than a religious one? Who would have thought that?
Because by then a majority of the Saracens had already been destroyed by the Tartars, as well as Baghdad, the capital of their kingdom, and the Caliph, who was a sort of pope for them. But these things were notwithstanding, and granted that a great amount of time has elapsed since then, we can observe nevertheless that the pernicious religion has not yet been destroyed. Instead, the suffering of the Christians grows more and more intense, throwing into question the validity of the argument. In the sixth place, this learned writer says that because we believe that after Muslim domination...
Pause. We believe, so like I said, during Christopher Columbus era, right? This is in the 1400s. This is what he thought was happening. He thought that it was the apocalypse happening. He said after what? And we know that Muslims and Jews were God's holy people in the old world because they were what? The biblical Hebrew nations. That's who they really were. And what were they? They were quote unquote black people in Europe. I guess we know America and Europe, but I guess they were all over. Just like the scripture said that they would be thrown like sand all over the map, right? All right, so keep going.
Okay. After Muslim domination, no other religion will come except the rule of the Antichrist.
Boom. So immediately after the Moorish Empire, all these Tartarian buildings were destroyed. All this stuff happened. During the Reconstruction period, what religion replaced the Muslim religion? And today, you don't hear what I'm saying about your ancestors. Everybody else on this planet has a national name. When they come to this continent, when they sign off on the paper, they might be like, yeah, I'm Asian. But I wish you would call a Korean person Chinese and watch how they face switch up on you. I wish you would call a Polish person Scottish and watch how dumbfounded they look when you say something like that. Like, what? This guy is an unlearned simpleton. Like, dude, you call yourself this generic word that describes all the indigenous people on this planet when you go by that construct of thinking. That's why I said if you call yourself black, you're a racist. Because you're putting everybody who is possibly from the old world into this box when everybody has always gone by countries and nation names. Okay, like you have to understand that this is a tool that has been used to conceal you and to conceal the heritage of the nations of the planet. All right, and without a shadow of a doubt, Christianity was used in order to colonize our people, and you were considered the enemies of Christ. Now, what is Christianity? We've done videos on this, and I've given you all the information that you need to give you a start. Because if I just tell you the answer, then you're not even going to receive it. You need to go look into this stuff. This is your walk.
Experience it for yourself.
Because our Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that he prophesied of there being superior citizens. So at this point, I've given you a lot of tools. If you care to know anything, really you should do more research into all this stuff to understand the destruction of the old world, the Reconstruction period, and then you were born a time after a time's time after that. And now you're just like, huh? I'm a black Christian. Alright? So with that being said, that's it. Yeah. Do some research. Get in them books! Islam. Peace.
And love.